Hi to folks, it's Zach, and welcome back to my Star Wars tips and tricks section of my Star Wars gaming channel. And today, we're talking about the latest update from BioWare on March the 8th, and this is about patch 5.2 dropping in a couple months, and what they labeled as CXP Nerfs. Now, guys, I'm gonna tell you, just before I go any further, just take a deep breath. A lot of times, the word nerf brings out a lot of ugly connotations. And we've all been through it. We've all at some point had a character that we loved who with some move that was just ridiculous that all of a sudden the nerf pack came along and now that move was completely wiped out. And I still have horrors about the great nerf of 14 when they took away orbital strike and the massive amount of power that I had for my sniper, okay? So we've all been there. But in this particular case, this is not a nerf to any particular character when 5.2 comes out, although that may still happen. This is particularly about CXP nerfing for chapters 1 and 2 of Knights of the Fallen Empire. Now, before everybody reaches for their pitchforks and starts banging down the dev's door, I want everybody to be encouraged to just take a deep breath and look at everything analytically, because this isn't the only announcement about 5.2 that we've had so far. In fact, there's been several announcements about 5.2. 5.2 is also where the new raid boss that's being tested in the PTS, Tithe, whom I actually have had the pleasure of facing in the PTS, that is also dropping in 5.2, and then a whole bunch of changes to the CXP system and to the gearing and looting possibilities in 5.2 at all. So the reason I mention this right now at the start of this video is depending on what your plans are for the future of this game, this announcement really gets diffused quite quickly and quite easily before you really have a chance to get upset. For a lot of players. Now, there are some players, a very core group of players that could be still potentially upset by this, and we'll talk about that in a sec. So, what is the announcement? Chapters 1 and 2 of Knights of the Fallen Empire will be nerfed as far as how much CXP they give. Now, the reason being is if you are a player in Star Wars The Old Republic and you are grinding CXP to get gear, this is one of the two easiest ways to do it. Those two chapters are actually designed for a brand new player to come in right at level 60 if they use that 60 level character token, and without ever having played the game, march right through both of those chapters. So for players that do know what they're doing, you can spacebar through all the conversations and annihilate everything in your path. Nothing in those two chapters is ever designed to give you a challenge. And for a lot of players out there, that's like most of the story mode content. But these two chapters in particular, because they serve as tutorials more than anything. So for a lot of people, this is a great solo opportunity to just go in, grind points, and get out. And you earned a pretty decent amount of CXP doing it. The first I had actually heard about this was from people grinding Chapter 2. So this isn't too much of a shock that this is happening, because I have known for a while that the devs do want the CXP, the bulk of CXP, to be earned in group events. The bigger the group and the tougher the content, the more CXP you should be earning. So this is kind of a blow to the solo players. If you do most of your CXP grinding through group activities right now, this doesn't affect you quite as much. Now, in the same body of this message, they do mention two other things. One was a response to a question that had come in, if the devs were going to go ahead and increase the amount of CXP from longer chapters, and at which point they kind of had said that they're considering it, but it's not really something on their plate. And lastly, a really big announcement, which when 5.2 does drop, the amount of CXP all across the board will be buffed. So even if those two chapters have been nerfed, CXP across the board will be increased. Not as high of a rate as it is currently, and I'll talk about that more in a second, but more than it was before this event. Now, why is this really important? Now, guys, if you've been paying attention to the last episode we did of Real Talk with Real Gamers, where Penny, Xenof, and I, we kind of talked about all this, then you already know why we're excited about 5.2 and why I would say for a lot of players this announcement shouldn't really get you up in arms. And this is because of the core, well, I shouldn't say the core, the change I'm the most excited about. In 5.2, bosses go back to having a loot table. So every boss will now drop gear again. And you, if you are playing this game and looking to gear up your character, you are not locked into CXP as your sole method of getting these pieces of gear anymore. And even since CXP has been introduced, they did have a patch where they actually introduced gear vendors on the fleet and tokens dropped from final bosses in raids to help the gearing process. And that was based off of player feedback. And now there's been enough player feedback to flip almost all the way back to the original system that we had before CXP was introduced. And even though they're not getting rid of CXP, I would tell you that if you are a person who likes group activities, if you like uprisings, or excuse me, I should just say, really it's raids. If you like raids, then you're really not going to have to worry much about the CXP system at all. In fact, most of CXP is something you can bypass entirely, because if you just simply go into raids now, you can get every single piece of your gear through a raid. You can even start doing that at story mode. Another little perk about story mode in 5.2, and this is one of the changes, is that story mode will start dropping tier 2 gear in story mode, which is, if you are a brand new level 70 player and you are at CXP level 1, this is the gear that is at level 101 through 200. That is when you would start earning tier 2 through the CXP system. You can actually get that just by queuing up and going into a story mode now as soon as 5.2 drops. Again, kind of making the CXP grind a little irrelevant if you are willing to go in and do group activities. Now, guys, I'm going to tell you straight up, I really enjoy raids. I really do. That's some of the most intense content in the game. It's really fun. It's dynamic. I love working with the other players, especially once you kind of get a good grind on what the raid entails. And, having seen Tithe in the PTS, I'm still very excited about new bosses that'll potentially coming up. So I can't talk about the PTS, but trust me, I'm excited. So when it comes to the gearing system in the game, I really feel like anything they do to CXP at this point is really still just the icing on the cake. If you're in it at the end game for gear, your best option is to just go and raid and get the gear that way. And then anything you earn through CXP is just, it's extra. You might get a piece early, you might get a piece later, but you should be able to plan out, if I need this particular piece, here's the raid I queue up to go for, and I get that piece eventually. But you can map that out. You don't have to wait for the gods of RNG to hopefully get it to you. That was the main complaint of CXP, besides the grind, is the RNG aspect of it. So the RNG is being tweaked as well in 5.2. If you are a solo player and all you do is grind CXP, I would also encourage you to know that even if these two chapters change, the RNG drop rates out of CXP is going to change. So if you're at level 1, you're seeing greens, blues, purples, legendaries. By the time you hit level 100 of that particular tier, you're seeing almost no greens that has being rooted out through algorithms. Very few blues. You should be seeing more purples, and you should be seeing at least one or so legendaries by the time you hit level 100. Now, again, just by changing the RNG rates doesn't guarantee you that you'll see any of the loot you're looking for. The only guarantees you have are to actually go into a raid. But that is a guarantee you have. If you go to a raid, you see that gear drop that you are potentially looking for, and now you're just rolling against other players for it. So guys, I hope this demystifies what BioWare has put out there for this announcement, especially when you put it in the context of the other 5.2 announcements that they have made. If you are a solo player, though, and this is one of the things that you've been doing to earn CXP, you don't like group events, you don't really enjoy the thought of raiding, maybe your computer just can't handle it, maybe you just don't have the time for it, whatever it is. But if this has been your primary method, then okay, you are in a place to feel a little upset about this. The thing I will encourage you to do, my encouragement, is that you go to the forum, and if you are going to talk to the devs, give them ammunition to work with. Let them know how this affects your style of gameplay, and then offer up something that you feel would work as a counter solution. So if chapters 1 and 2, which you've been grinding, and that's your primary method, if that isn't working for you, say, hey, here's what would work. And if they get enough ammunition like that, it makes it easier for them to change it. That's what's been happening so far to the CXP system. That's how we got loot to drop from all the bosses again. That's how we got more raids to start getting back into our game design. What's the word I'm looking for? Game design schedule. Thank you. So guys, don't be afraid of that. The forums are there for you to communicate with devs. The devs communicate on a regular basis. They really do care about the game and the gamers. And I have seen from the feedback that comes from the gamers that they will change what they do. Especially if you can also relate it to the bottom line. Here is how this affects my ability to pay into this game or not pay into this game. It's a lot more constructive, and it helps them out a lot more than just saying, SWTOR is dead, I hate this game, I hate you, and I hate you all for making this game, period. Like, that really didn't help anything. Because at the end of the day, I'm assuming if you're checking in on Star Wars Notes, you do care about the game. And on some level, you want it to be good, or you want to play it and have it be good. And if that's the case, then get constructive with your criticism. Go back to them and let them know, here is what I would love to see. And try to make it practical, something that you feel like is something within their power to make. One of the things I kind of avoid when I give them feedback is something like, I want you guys to redesign the game engine. I personally would love to see an upgraded game engine, but I know that's probably outside of their bounds. What instead I might say is, hey, could we get some of these quality of life improvements that don't require huge redesign of the game engine, but would make our lives a little bit better as players. Something that they can work within the lines for. Okay? So guys, I hope this helps. I hope you guys are enjoying your week. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them below. The best questions that you guys leave here get pulled up by me and put into a next or future episode of Real Talk with Real Gamers, and that way that conversation keeps going. You guys are very intelligent players and very passionate, and I love taking what your questions are and giving that over to myself, Penny, Xenoff, and the rest of the crew from Morons and Mayhem, and going ahead and exploring those issues. That's how these things get pushed forward. So guys, I hope you're having a great week, and we'll see you next time.